A retired Marine in San Diego was told his leg circulation had dropped low enough that he would probably need a procedure within 2 years. 14 months later, his vascular surgeon looked at the follow-up numbers and called them, his word, unexpected. He never added a drug. He added a fruit that most people keep in the back of the freezer and never think twice about. If your calves cramp when you walk, if your feet go cold at night, if stairs have started to feel like a small hill, stay with me, because this is really about keeping your own legs underneath you. That fruit is on a list of 6, and I'm going to tell you exactly which one, and how to know which of them your legs actually need most. I have spent years in emergency medicine, and if there is one thing that job teaches you, it is that the leg rarely fails all at once. It fails quietly, over years, while the person attached to it keeps assuming the heaviness and the cold and the cramping are just what getting older feels like. The people who do best are almost never the ones with perfect habits. They are the ones who noticed the pattern early and did something small about it before the artery made the decision for them. So let me reframe this whole conversation, because this is not really about circulation as some vague idea. Poor circulation in aging legs is not one problem. It is 3 different things breaking in 3 different places, and each one has a different fix. Once you can tell which of the 3 is happening in your legs, the food stops being a random health tip and starts being a targeted repair job. Here's the roadmap. First, I'm going to show you the 3 ways leg circulation actually breaks down, and a 30-second self-check so you can figure out which one is yours. Then I am going to match 6 fruits to those 3 failure points, ranked by how much repair each one does. Somewhere in the middle, I will tell you which fruit that Marine added, and why it belongs at number 1. And near the end, I will give you the pairing mistake that quietly wastes half the benefit, plus the exact leg symptoms that mean stop eating fruit and call a doctor today. Let us start with the self-check, because it costs nothing and it changes everything about how you use the rest of this video. Sit down for a second and think about when your legs bother you most. Failure point number 1 is the artery lining. If your legs cramp specifically when you walk and ease off within a couple of minutes when you stop, that is the artery struggling to deliver enough blood during effort. Doctors call that intermittent claudication, which just means cramping that comes with walking and quits with rest. Failure point number 2 is inflammation and stiff, narrow vessels. If your feet are cold and pale, if the skin on your lower legs looks shiny or loses hair, if small cuts down there heal slowly, that points to chronic inflammation narrowing the small vessels. Failure point number 3 is the veins. If your legs feel heavy and achy by evening, if your ankles swell after sitting, if you can see rope-like veins near the surface, that is the vein valves weakening and letting blood pool. Most people over 60 have some of all 3, but usually one is loudest, and that is the one you feed first. While you are sitting there, do 2 quick things that cost you nothing. Press firmly on the nail of your big toe until it turns pale, then let go and count how long the color takes to flood back. Under 2 seconds is what you want. If it drags out to 3, 4, 5 seconds, the blood is arriving slowly. Then lay the back of your hand flat against the top of each foot and compare it to your calf. A foot that is noticeably colder than the leg above it, or 1 foot colder than the other, is a foot that is not getting its share. Neither of these replaces a real exam, but they are the same crude checks I do at the bedside, and they tell you in 10 seconds whether your feet are at the end of a struggling supply line. Now, why does any of this happen after 60 in the first place? Here is the part most people are never told. The inner lining of every blood vessel you own is a single layer of cells called the endothelium, and it does something remarkable. It manufactures a gas called nitric oxide on demand, and that gas is the signal that tells your arteries to relax and widen so blood can flow. Think of nitric oxide as the master key that unlocks your vessels from the inside. As you age, that lining makes less and less of it. By the time many people reach their mid-70s, The endothelium in their leg arteries can be producing a fraction of the nitric oxide it made at 50. Less key, fewer doors open, less blood reaching the calf and the foot. That is where the ache, the cold, and the numbness come from at the root. And this is exactly the machinery that food can push back on. Which brings us to the first two fruits, both aimed straight at that artery lining. Number 1 on the repair list for failure point 1 is the pomegranate. I know some of you have heard pomegranate hyped on a supplement label and tuned it out. Set that aside, because what this fruit does is specific. Pomegranate is loaded with compounds called punic halogens, and your own gut bacteria convert them into a molecule called urolithin A. That molecule does two useful things. It supports the endothelium in making more nitric oxide, and it switches on a cellular cleanup process called mitophagy, which is your cells hauling out their old, worn-out power plants, the mitochondria, and replacing them with fresh ones. After 65, that cleanup slows down, and sluggish, junked-up mitochondria are a big reason aging legs feel so heavy and tired by mid-afternoon. Picture a workshop where nobody has taken out the broken machines in years. Everything runs slower. Pomegranate helps restart the cleanup crew. Here is how to actually use it, because that is the part that matters. Aim for about a half cup of fresh pomegranate seeds, or 8 ounces of 100% pomegranate juice, and read the label, because most bottles on the shelf are juice blends cut with apple juice and added sugar. Morning is a fine time. And here is a small upgrade that costs nothing. Eat it with a little fat, like a spoon of extra virgin olive oil or a few nuts stirred into plain yogurt. Those punic halogen compounds absorb far better with fat present than they do on their own. That is the theme for almost every fruit today. How you eat it changes how much reaches your legs. Now, pomegranate helps your vessels make the key. The second fruit helps your body build the lock's raw material, and it is one most people write off as nothing but sugar and water. Number 2 for the artery lining is watermelon. I had a patient, I will call her Diane, 69, a retired school teacher outside Phoenix, who could not get from her car to the far end of the grocery store without her calves seizing up and forcing her to lean on the cart. Classic claudication. She had been told medication was her only lever. We added watermelon to her day, along with walking, and about 8 weeks later she told me she had walked the full loop of the store and back without stopping once. Not a miracle, just biology given what it needed. Here is the biology. Watermelon is one of the richest food sources of an amino acid called L-citrulline. Your kidneys turn L-citrulline into L-arginine, and L-arginine is the direct raw material your vessel walls use to build nitric oxide. So think of watermelon as a slow-release supply truck for the exact molecule your circulation is running short on. And here is why this route matters, specifically after 60. Your body's ability to absorb arginine straight from food falls with age, but the citrulline pathway keeps working. Researchers at Florida State University have spent years studying watermelon and citrulline in older adults, and a 2025 review pulling together the randomized trials found that watermelon and citrulline meaningfully lowered blood pressure and reduced arterial stiffness in middle-aged and older people. Stiff arteries are old arteries. Loosening them is exactly what tired legs need. 2 practical notes. Watermelon is also more than 90% water, so it thins the blood a little just by hydrating you. And dehydration is one of the most overlooked reasons older adults circulate poorly. Aim for about 2 cups of fresh watermelon, and if you can stand it, eat a little of the pale rind right up against the green, because that is where the citrulline actually concentrates. And here is a multiplier most people miss. Your muscles make their own nitric oxide every time you walk. So the fruit and a short walk are not 2 separate tips. They stack. This is why one of the most effective things you can do is eat a little of these fruits and then take a 10-minute walk after a meal, when your blood sugar is rising anyway. The food supplies the raw material, the walking flips the switch, and the two together open your leg vessels far more than either alone. You do not need a gym. You need the kitchen and the sidewalk, in that order. So that is failure point 1 covered. Pomegranate to help make the key, watermelon to supply the raw material. If your main problem is cramping when you walk, those two are where you start. But some of you do not cramp when you walk. Your legs are cold and inflamed, and the small vessels have gone quiet. That is a different fire, and it needs a different fruit. Failure point 2 is chronic low-grade inflammation, and this is the one that hides. Here is what happens. After 65, a master inflammatory switch inside your vessel walls, scientists call it NF-kappa B, tends to get stuck in the on position. Imagine a car alarm that goes off and then never shuts up. That constant quiet alarm stiffens the vessel walls and slowly shuts down the tiniest capillaries feeding your leg muscles. And here is the belief I want to disrupt. A normal exam does not rule this out. I have watched patients get told their legs are fine because there was no big blockage on the scan, when the real problem was hundreds of microscopic vessels going dark. Normal results do not always mean no problem. They sometimes mean nobody looked at the right level. The fruit that answers this best is the blueberry, and specifically the wild blueberry. Blueberries carry the highest concentration of anthocyanins, those deep blue-purple pigments, of nearly any fruit you can buy. And inside your body, those pigments act like precision anti-inflammatory agents aimed right at the vessel wall. This is well studied. A double-blind trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that wild blueberry polyphenols improved vascular function in healthy older adults, and broader reviews of the randomized trials show blueberry intake improving flow-mediated dilation, which is just a measured way of asking, how well do your arteries open up when they are supposed to? Anthocyanins appear to quiet that stuck NF-kappa B alarm, and as the alarm settles, damaged capillary networks can slowly come back online over weeks and months. For the dose, 1 cup of wild blueberries daily is the evidence-based target. And here's a piece of good news for anyone watching their grocery budget. Frozen wild blueberries are just as effective as fresh, often cheaper, and they actually pack nearly double the anthocyanins of the big cultivated berries. Pair them with a little vitamin C, a few orange segments, some kiwi, because vitamin C helps protect nitric oxide from being broken down before it reaches your legs. $2 of frozen berries and half an orange is a real vascular intervention. That is not a slogan, that is chemistry. Now here is the fruit I promised would surprise you, and it is the one you have almost certainly been told to avoid. Number 4, still aimed at inflammation, is the fig. For years, the standard advice, especially for anyone managing blood sugar, has been to treat figs as basically candy and cut them out. And in doing that, millions of older adults quietly threw away one of the most useful vascular foods on the shelf. Figs are rich in a flavonoid called quercetin, and quercetin has a genuinely interesting property. It gently inhibits an enzyme called ACE, angiotensin-converting enzyme. That is the very same enzyme that a whole class of common blood pressure pills, the ACE inhibitors, are designed to block. When that enzyme runs too hot, your vessels clamp down and less blood reaches your feet and toes. Now, to be honest with you, a fig is not a substitute for a prescription, and nobody should stop a medication over a piece of fruit. But natural quercetin nudging that same pathway, with no side effects, is exactly the kind of small daily lever that adds up. Figs also carry vitamin B6 and folate, which your body uses to keep homocysteine, an amino acid that damages vessel walls when it climbs, in a safer range. And that regulation tends to slip after 70. 2 to 3 fresh figs, or 4 to 5 dried with no added sugar, is a reasonable daily amount. If blood sugar is your concern, this is the fix. Eat the figs with a handful of raw pumpkin seeds. The seeds add magnesium, which relaxes vessels in its own right and blunts the sugar spike. And they turn the fig from a quick hit of sweetness into a slow, steady one. So, for cold, inflamed legs, blueberries quiet the alarm, and figs ease the clamp. And now we are at the one that Marine added. Number 1 on this entire list is the tart cherry, the Montmorency variety specifically, and I put it at the top because it is the only fruit here that does something to all 3 failure points at once. Let me finish James's story because it is the reason I take this fruit seriously. James, 67, retired Marine, San Diego. A vascular specialist measured his ankle brachial index. That is, a simple comparison of blood pressure at your ankle versus your arm, and it is one of the best, cheap ways to catch peripheral artery disease. And the number was low enough to label him moderate PAD. He was told to expect a procedure inside 2 years. He was not ready to accept that. He built his day around tart cherries alongside walking and the other changes we have talked about, and he followed it the way a Marine follows a plan. 14 months later, his repeat ankle brachial index had climbed enough that his own specialist called the result unexpected. James called it a miracle. I would just call it consistency meeting biology. Here is why tart cherries earn that top spot. They contain some of the highest anthocyanin concentrations of any fruit, in some batches several times what a blueberry carries. So they hit that same inflammatory alarm even harder. Reviews of the randomized trials on Montmorency tart cherry show reductions in blood pressure and in key inflammatory markers, and a well-known study in older adults found tart cherry juice lowering both blood pressure and LDL, the harmful cholesterol, over just a few weeks. Those inflammatory proteins are the same ones that, left elevated year after year, build the plaques that choke off blood flow in the legs. Knock them down, and you slow the choking. But there are 2 deeper reasons this fruit fits older legs so well, and this is where it separates from everything else. First, tart cherries are one of the few natural sources of melatonin, and melatonin is not just a sleep signal. It is a powerful antioxidant for the vessel lining, and it helps smooth out the blood pressure surge that many older adults get in the early morning hours, right around waking, when a huge share of strokes and cardiac events actually happen. A tart cherry juice in the evening is doing quiet work while you sleep, blunting that dawn spike so your arteries are not slammed at their most vulnerable hour. Second, tart cherries appear to help switch on the machinery your body uses to grow brand new capillaries, new little detour roads around narrowed vessels. That road-building ability drops sharply after 75, and tart cherry is one of the few foods shown to nudge it back up in older adults. Fewer roads is why old legs run out of blood. Helping build new ones is as close to reversal as food gets. Use 8 ounces of pure tart cherry juice or 1 cup of whole tart cherries, fresh or frozen. If you use juice, the label must say 100% tart cherry with no added sugar, because the sweetened blends undo half the point. Evening is ideal to catch that morning blood pressure benefit. And if you want the single most powerful move of this whole list, take your tart cherry alongside a little pomegranate. The anthocyanins and the punicalagins together do more than either does alone. So that is your peak fruit and your 3-in-1 answer. Take a breath, because I have not forgotten the 3rd failure point, and if your legs swell and ache by evening, this next one is yours. Failure point 3 is the veins, and it works completely differently from the arteries. Your arteries have muscular walls that push blood down to your feet with force. Your veins have no such muscle. To get blood back up against gravity, they rely on a ladder of tiny one-way valves that snap shut so blood cannot fall backward. After 60, the connective tissue in those valves loses its spring. They stop sealing tightly, and blood pools in your lower legs. That pooling is the heavy, achy, swollen ankle feeling by dinner time, the visible ropey veins, and in the worst cases, a real clot risk. The fruit for this is the dark red grape, especially Concord grapes, because the skins and seeds are concentrated in compounds called OPCs. Here is the useful image. OPCs appear to cross-link and reinforce the collagen fibers in vein walls, the way rebar reinforces concrete. You are not just soothing the vein, you are helping rebuild its structure so the valves can seal again. A clinical trial in the vascular literature found grapeseed OPCs improved vein tone and reduced leg swelling, that fluid leakage from weak vessels, in adults over 60 across a couple of months. I had a patient, a retired florist in Sacramento, whose ankles swelled so badly by every afternoon that she had stopped going out. 3 months of dark grapes plus simply putting her feet up above her heart for 10 minutes twice a day, and the evening swelling dropped enough that she went back to wearing the shoes she liked. Small lever, real life. 1 cup of dark red or Concord grapes daily, and eat the seeds if you can tolerate them, because that is where the OPCs live. And because these compounds are fat-soluble, have them with a few walnuts or almonds so they actually absorb. Now, before you run to the store, let me give you the pairing mistake that quietly wastes half of everything I just described, because this is where good intentions leak away. 3 quick rules. First, fat-soluble fruits need fat. The OPCs in grapes and the punicalagins in pomegranate barely absorb on an empty stomach. A few nuts or a spoon of olive oil alongside can multiply what reaches your bloodstream. Second, the juice trap. A bottle labeled cherry or pomegranate cocktail or blend is usually mostly apple juice and added sugar, and that sugar spikes your blood pressure and inflammation in the other direction, canceling the fruit's benefit. The label has to say 100% no added sugar. Third, do not blast them all at once. Rotating 2 or 3 of these across your week is easier to sustain than a giant smoothie you quit in a month. And consistency, not intensity, is what actually moves your circulation. Now let me answer the 3 questions I know some of you are already thinking, because you should not have to guess. First, I'm diabetic. Isn't fruit off limits? Whole fruit, with its fiber, is not the same as juice or candy, and pairing berries or figs with nuts or seeds flattens the blood sugar rise even further. Talk to your doctor about amounts, but for most people, whole fruit belongs on the plate, not off it. Second, I'm on a blood pressure medication. Will these stack dangerously? These fruits nudge blood pressure gently downward, which is usually welcome. But if you already run low or feel lightheaded, check your numbers and mention it to your doctor before you go big on tart cherry or watermelon. Third, and this one is important, I take a blood thinner. Grapes, cherries, and pomegranate can interact with certain blood thinners, and pomegranate in particular can affect how some medications are processed. If you take warfarin or any anticoagulant, do not overhaul your fruit intake without running it past your pharmacist or doctor first. None of this is a reason to fear food. It is a reason to loop in the person who knows your chart. And the question I get most? How long until I feel anything? Be honest with yourself about the timeline, because the wrong expectation is what makes people quit. Some of this works fast. The blood-thinning effect of better hydration and the vessel-relaxing effect of nitric oxide can show up in a couple of weeks as slightly easier walking. But rebuilding vein valves, cooling down years of inflammation, growing new capillaries, that is a matter of months, not days. Give it a fair 8 to 12 weeks before you decide whether it is helping. That is roughly the window every one of those studies used, and it is about how long your vessel walls need to actually remodel. One more, because people ask, why not just buy the extract in a pill? A supplement gives you an isolated compound stripped of everything around it. The whole fruit brings the fiber that slows the sugar, the vitamin C that protects the nitric oxide, the water that thins the blood, and dozens of cofactors that work as a team. Every trial I have described used food or whole fruit juice, not a capsule. If a pill is all you can manage, it is better than nothing. But the fruit is the version that was actually tested, and it is cheaper. And now the most important 30 seconds of this entire video, because food is for the slow, quiet problem. And some leg symptoms are not slow or quiet. Here is the latter. If your legs are generally heavy, cold, or crampy, and it has been creeping up over months, that is monitor and feed territory. Start the fruit and bring it up at your next regular visit. If you have leg cramping with walking that is clearly getting worse month over month, call your primary care doctor and ask specifically about an ankle brachial index test. It is quick, and Medicare and most insurance cover it when there is a reason. But if you ever have one leg that suddenly becomes swollen, painful, warm, and red, do not wait and do not eat a cherry. That can be a blood clot, and you need to be seen at an urgent care or emergency room the same day. And if you have foot or toe pain at rest, especially at night, or a foot that turns cold, pale, or blue, or a sore on your foot that will not heal, that is a limb that is running out of blood, and that is an emergency room today. Do not drive yourself if the pain is severe. Call 911. Food does not treat a clot or a dying foot. Knowing the difference is what keeps you safe. So let me hand you the whole thing as one pattern you can actually remember. Aging legs fail in 3 places. The artery lining stops making nitric oxide. Silent inflammation shuts down the small vessels, and the vein valves stop sealing. Match the fruit to the failure. Cramping when you walk, pomegranate and watermelon, to make the key and supply the raw material. Cold, inflamed, slow-healing legs, blueberries and figs, to quiet the alarm and ease the clamp. Heavy, swollen, achy by evening legs, dark grapes to rebuild the valves. And tart cherry sits over all 3, which is why the Marine's leg is the story I keep telling. Eat them with a little fat, buy them without added sugar, and rotate them so you actually stick with it. Here is your one small step, the only one I want you to take today. Do not overhaul your kitchen. Pick the single failure point that sounded most like your legs, choose one fruit for it, and put it on tomorrow morning's plate. Then, for the next 7 days, do one thing. Notice how far you can walk before your legs complain, and jot it down. That number is your circulation talking to you, and in a few weeks it is how you will know this is working. And if you own a blood pressure cuff, take a reading a few mornings a week and write it down too. The American Heart Association considers anything at or above 130/80 high, and several of these fruits nudge that top number down. Watching it drift lower over a couple of months is quiet proof your vessels are relaxing. You do not need perfection here. You are looking for a pattern, not a clean record. Small changes, repeated, genuinely change the direction of aging. One last thing, because I mean it. That quiet idea that after a certain age, the heavy legs and the cold feet and the stairs that feel like a mountain are just the price of getting older, the research does not support it, and neither do the people I have watched turn it around. Your circulation is not a lost cause at 60 or 70 or 80. Your body is trying to keep those legs working every single day. It just needs the raw materials. So give it some tomorrow. And if someone you love has been rubbing their calves and blaming their age, send them this. The fruit is easy, but knowing which one their legs need is the part that changes things.